Yep,
Excellent.
go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming to this briefing of the Land Use, Transportation, and Public Safety Committee. We are taking a look at MC 1522. We have County Executive Elrich and Mr. Furstenberg on the line to help us with this briefing. Mr. County Executive, I know we have a hard stop at 12:30. How would you like to split your time with Mr. Furstenberg?
I'm going to do what I hope is a relatively quick synopsis of the bill. So I think I can clear up some stuff.
Okay.
And then Mr. Furstenberg can chat, and then you guys can ask us questions.
Great. That sounds wonderful.
I sketched this out, and it shouldn't be too terribly long,
Except
except for the one place where I put in ad lib.
No. Cross that part out. Just kidding. The floor is yours, Mr. County Executive.
Okay. So first of all, thank you for hearing this today and engaging this conversation. I think this is a really important conversation for Montgomery County. We spent a lot of time analyzing Montgomery County versus our competition. And, the good news for you is that you'll see in the JLL report, we tax less than most of the surrounding jurisdictions. However, we have a tax that is misplaced in the process that raises the price of doing business in Montgomery County, unlike in other jurisdictions. And so we've wanted to move toward a solution that gets us similar to what Virginia does, which allows them both to not have this tax on the front end, but also allows them to raise more money than we do for capital projects. And so let me explain basically what this is. The county already has the authority to build transportation special taxing districts. That was the product of some of the legislation that Rich Madaleno put in when he was in the state Senate. These districts can be drawn in the way that excludes existing residential property, but it makes it very difficult. We did this in White Flint, as you know. We draw squiggly lines around existing residential. It is complicated to do, and it has some issues that fortunately haven't surfaced here yet. But it's a problem. What we wanted to do is say, take a route like BRT down 355 and just say this applies to all commercial property and new residential within a half mile on either side of the route, and it applies to CBDs. So it would give us an elegant way of making this distinction, but we can't do it right now. The current law was written so that we, continue to have a uniform tax rate. So we're unable to have a different tax rate on commercial property than residential property. This gives us that ability. That is the big change that this bill provides that doesn't exist in the existing bill. And here's something that does exist in the existing bill, which has been a concern of developers with this, is I can create a special taxing district under the bill and authority we have today. It does not require that the impact taxes go away. I can create that district and I can still have impact taxes. So it's kind of the worst of all possible worlds. With the amendment we proposed, where we implement a special taxing district, the new development would not be subject to the impact tax. So this actually is a win on the development side. It's a win on the county side. And it's better than the existing bill where I can't protect people. Ike sent the bill forward about, I guess it was an authority for the BRT projects, and it got bottled up because it had the same tax rate for residential and commercial. And the residents went berserk because the attitude in general is they're not going to pay for things that were generally recognized as developer responsibilities. I've talked to a ton of developers. I've sat down in BF Saul's lunchroom and talked with him, and most of them would like to make this trade. Why does this work for the development community? Because I know we're trying to stimulate growth here. If you have to pay an impact tax, it appears at the front end of your project. Most of the time you wind up unless you got a lot of cash to burn, you wind up including this in the financing of your project. But either way, you've either put in more equity or you've taken on more debt. And in order to get the rate of return you need or the rents that'll support the debt you've taken on, it drives the cost of the project. So what we found is if you were in Virginia, Fairfax, and you were building a project and construction was the same, labor was the same, everything was the same, every project in Montgomery County would pencil out more expensively because they would have the impact tax added into the front end. That doesn't happen across the river, it doesn't happen in DC. What they have in the special taxing districts, they put in long-term taxes based only on the projects. None of this money goes to the general fund. It can't be used for anything but capital projects in the transportation realm that would serve the places that are being taxed. So it's direct. It serves the communities. When they pay impact taxes, I don't know if you realize this, there's no guarantee that the impact tax will even be spent in the place where it's collected. So this guarantees that if you're paying a tax, you're paying it where it's collected. It'll be 20 or 30 years, depending on the length of bonds that we put out there to fund construction projects. In Virginia, this is usually done as a pass-through, or landlords simply raise rents high enough for them to pay the tax. But at the end of the day, it's about the same amount of money, but it comes out over 20 or 30 years. It lessens the cost of the project. It relieves the consumer resident anxiety over being taxed for things that have been traditionally in the developer's pocket. And in my mind, it's a happy ending because now I can take a stream of revenue and I can dedicate it to capital projects like the BRT, where we have no means of funding it today. I can dedicate it to those projects. I can move the county forward on transportation, and at the same time, developers benefit by paying less money up front and not having to finance it up front. So to me, this is a win-win. I can, like I said, I could create these districts tomorrow. I could go through a lot of cumbersome line drawing to keep the residents out. The impact tax liability is still in there. I can take out the liability and I can draw neat lines if you will help us do this. That's my pitch.
Got it. Thank you. And very concise, Mr. County Executive. I appreciate that.
I've been working on this one.
Thank you. Mr. Furstenberg, go ahead.
All right, I'll try to be more concise. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Doug Furstenberg. I'm with Stonebridge in Bethesda. We're a developer in the DMV and a multi-decade resident on Bradley Boulevard. My involvement in this effort is really just to help improve the community. It started when the county executive asked me to chair his economic advisory group, 18 months ago now, to come up with recommendations to help the county as it came out of the pandemic. One of the specific recommendations was to relook at how infrastructure is funded in the county. There is clearly a significant gap between the infrastructure that the county needs and what the county can fund. The term I like to use is getting to a state of good repair. So it's not just new projects, but you're trying to make sure all of the existing infrastructure is in a good place. One of the recommendations of the EAG was an infrastructure working group, which the county executive formed. And then I, of course, since I might have come up with an idea, I was then asked to chair the infrastructure working group. We started this summer. Chris Conklin, MC, DOT director, and Hannah Henn have been working to get a broad group of private folks and county folks up to speed, mostly getting, I think, the private folks to understand how we really do fund things today, how big the gap is. And we kind of just finished that work up in the fall. There were several presentations by outside experts to help us understand how others did it. What we're really planning to do is put the next 6 months into how to fill the gap. What are the ways to do it? How to come up with a long-term sustainable funding source. And to me, the test of a successful plan is one that gives assurance to the residents and the business community that the improvements that need to occur will occur and that we have a way to maintain it. And I think you have to have that assurance on both sides so that way you avoid the issue of, is it just for the developers? Is it just for the community? I think we need a holistic look. We're planning to meet twice a month for the next 6 months to hopefully come back with what I would call a fully vetted and viable plan. I think that works well within your timing to allow us, to the extent we need additional legislation. It's certainly possible we won't, but I'm far from an expert on state law, but I suspect we will probably need some help. And we've added, I saw she was on the call, Delegate Pelikovich Carr, excuse me, there, has joined our work group, though she did suggest that maybe during the session her time might be somewhat limited. I didn't understand why. But we're trying to get a broad group to understand what we're doing. So when we come up with a plan, people will understand the work that went into it, that the ideas were broad and vetted, and we look forward to coming back to a plan that would work. So with that, those are my comments. Happy to answer any questions that folks might have.
Wonderful. Thank
Can I
you.
make an addition to that
Sure.
real quickly? So this, just to be clear, this does not create any taxing district. I mean, there's the authority to do that already exists. All this gives us is a tool. So while Doug and the group are working on a plan, and there are many things in it, I'm willing to do TIFs, something the county never did before, but I, can see ways we can use TIFs here. When they come back with a plan, we'll just simply have this in place and ready to implement. I feel some urgency because I'm beginning to see a great interest in, for example, White Flint around the life sciences. A lot of people are talking to us about projects there and elsewhere in the county. If I can start taking this off the table, this is, for example, something Frederick doesn't have. So when somebody's saying, am I going to build a lab here or am I going to Frederick? It's another thing that helps us be more competitive. And I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't think at the end of the day, the county's balance sheet will be at least as healthy as it would be with an impact tax, with the added benefit of I can actually build stuff in the long term. So the work will be done by this group to come up with plans. This just gives us flexibility inside one of the tools.
Got it. Thank you. Chair Corman?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for letting me audit your committee today. I have a few questions, if that's all right. Maybe I'll start with Mr. Furstenberg. So, Mr. Furstenberg, first, I thank you for giving Delegate Pelikovich Carr a seat at the table. Is there anybody from the county legislative branch involved in your discussions?
Yes, Council Member Friedson and Council Member Glass are on the working group.
Great. And just, I'm hearing a couple of different things here. So I just want to make sure I understand that, it's possible that something that looks like this bill may be something you all seek. You're just not 100% of the way there yet. And there's other things you're considering as well. Is that more or less accurate?
Yeah, we don't know the tools we'll need to make it work. This is certainly one that we will look at, but we don't have a holistic plan to fund the gap yet. And so that our effort over the next 6 months is to figure out exactly how to do it and what tools we do that we have and the tools we don't have that we would need.
Great. And let me thank you for taking this on. I understand you had an idea, and so you were tasked with doing this. So there's a danger in having ideas, but really appreciate you working on this because this has been a long festering issue. The county executive mentioned a submission in the prior term by the prior county executive, and very little has happened since then once that bill was withdrawn. So appreciate folks working on it. County executive, I could ask you a couple of questions if you don't mind.
Feel free, no.
Great. So I've heard quite a bit about this legislation from stakeholders. One question I've been asked multiple times is, we have an existing special taxing district in White Flint that you referenced.
Right.
Would property owners there and then the people who have the tax passed through to them be subject to multiple special taxing districts?
It is potential to have multiple special taxing districts, but that district doesn't include, for example, anything related to transportation like the BRT. So that either that transportation district would have to be amended for the BRT, or we'd have to put in place something else to raise money for the BRT. It would make no sense to exclude them from partially funding this and then have everybody else paying for it. I mean, this has got to, everybody benefits. In fact, probably the place that'll benefit more than anything else is building that boulevard down Rockville Pike with the BRT running down the middle of it. I don't go any phone call, for example, with Alan Gottlieb from Lerner without a discussion about when is this BRT going to get done. So it's important, and they would pay their proportionate share of this piece. We can talk about the other piece.
Okay. I mean, I would just caution you that I think there's a lot of concern about people being, especially since almost all of your discussions relate to White Flint, If we're talking about one special taxing district or one area that would be subject to multiple special taxing districts, I think you're going to have quite a battle on your hand, both at the state level and the county level for some of those property owners. So just something to think about. The second thing is, in your rhetoric, you've used this, but the legislation's not clear on this, and I understand the timing. And let me say on the timing, appreciate that you were trying to comply with our deadlines on getting a bill in, which are really unforgiving. They require very early action. So appreciate that. But there's nothing in the legislation that's introduced to sort of trade this for impact taxes. But in your mind, that is what you want to do, right? You would want to.
That is exactly. Yes, I had thought that an amendment was going to be put in, so I'll get with Melanie to see where that is, because we left it, I think the last time we talked with you, to say, go ahead and amend the thing. I have no intention of trying to collect both. That would defeat the purpose of it.
Great. Thanks for clarifying that. The other thing, I spent some time on Twitter, which I should never do, but I did it anyway. And one of the items that was noted on there is that I think under the bill as drafted, it's impossible for a single family home to be in a special taxing district, even though other types of residential can be in a special taxing district, like a condo building or townhouses. So I was just wondering if you could enlighten me on that a little bit. And is that the intent, or what's the thinking around that? Obviously, if you're in a very isolated suburban area, maybe you're not going to have a BRT line. Some of us actually live in a single family home within a transit shed.
So there's virtually no single family construction along any of the BRT lines, certainly within a half mile of the BRT lines. It's just not happening. If you think about Rockville Pike, that place for single family is pretty much built out. Everything that's being done is multifamily units. I expect that to continue. But I can certainly look at it. I mean, if I included it, it would affect pretty much virtually no one. And the tax isn't going to be on every road in Montgomery County. It's focused on the roads where there's going to be BRT or some other potential improvements. We haven't excluded roads for this. So there's some talk about Observation Drive extended from the college into Clarksburg. That's a project that we might make eligible for. So there are a few other things that it's enabled beyond just transit.
Great. And last question for me, and I don't know, this is for either of you, I suppose. Is there anybody from Park and Planning involved in your discussions?
Yes, Gwen Wright's on the infrastructure work group.
Great. Well, thank you. On behalf of only myself, look forward to continuing to work with you on this and appreciate the partnership.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do other folks have questions? Really? All right. That's rather great for you all. You get off easy. So thank you both for this. We appreciate your time today. This is certainly helpful. I am not a tax person, so this helped me a lot. Thank you.
So can I ask Mark?
Thank you for your time. Look forward to working with you. Sorry, Mark.
Yes, Mark, did laying it out that way make it simpler? At least in terms of how I structured it. I'm trying to make sure that I don't go down rabbit holes I don't need to go to.
I'm sorry, was that directed to me, Mr. Kenninger?
Yeah. Because you've heard me talk about this before.
It's a very fine presentation. As I said, I think we have a real issue here we need to work on, and look forward to the continuing efforts to do that collaboratively, and really appreciate Delegate Polakovich-Carr taking the lead for the delegation on it.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, with that concludes our briefing, and that concludes the work of the committee today. Thank you, everyone, for your time, and we will be in touch.
Thank you.